This is the podcast, Cristo Rey. It's almost Halloween, yeah, almost time for trick or treat. This is the podcast, Cristo Rey. Now it's time to sink your teeth into the podcast Halloween special.
Welcome to the Cristo Rey podcast Halloween special. I am your frighteningly mysterious host, Pure. Now ask the average person who is the greatest horror writer of all time, and inevitably one name will spring to their lips. Edgar Allan Poe. Today on the podcast, we present to you one of Edgar Allan Poe's most famous tales of spine-tingling horror, The Telltale Heart, read by your second favorite podcast host, after me, of course, Vivian. Okay, let's get started. The Cristo Rey podcast proudly presents The Telltale Heart, Part 1.
True, nervous, very dreadfully nervous I have been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how heathily and calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object? There was none. Passion? There was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point you fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution. With what foresight. With what dissimulation. I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned to the latch of the door and opened it oh so gently. And then I had made an opening sufficient for my head and put in a dark lantern, all closed so that no light shone out. Then I thrust my head in. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay on his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been as wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern, cautiously, oh so cautiously, I undid it. Just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight, but I found the eye was always closed. And so, it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, he would have been a profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, Jade.
This is a pretty spooky story, don't you think?
Definitely.
So what's up?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, you said if I did a good job with the podcast PSAs, that you'd show me the pool on the 5th floor. When are you going to do that?
Soon. Changing the subject, did you know there's a Catholic connection to Halloween and a Day of the Dead?
Yeah, I think I heard that somewhere.
Well, let's get Mr. Carrillo, Miss O'Connell, and Miss Loffer-Strahlerhoff out here to explain a little bit about that.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Miss Loffer-Strahlerhoff, I heard you used to be a freshman theology teacher. Even though you're not a theology teacher anymore, you still know your theology, right? Could you help us explain the Catholic connection to Halloween?
Sure. So, to understand
the Catholic connection to Halloween, we first have to look at the day after Halloween, which in the Catholic Church we call All Saints' Day. This is actually a really old holiday in the Catholic Church. It dates back to the 4th century as a way of honoring the martyrs in the Catholic Church, the people who died for their faith, and the people who we believe are already in heaven with God. But the day before that was referred to as All Hallows Eve. Hallow meaning holy people. And so it's the evening of the holy people, the day before we celebrate all the holy people who are in heaven with God. So as time has gone on, that is now referred to as Halloween.
Yeah, and to add on to that, we want to remember that when we die, Catholics believe that death is not actually the end. So all of the holy men and women who have come before us want us to join them in heaven. So they're cheering us on, they're praying for us. So when we celebrate Halloween, sometimes it's helpful to remember thousands and thousands and thousands of men and women who have lived on this earth, who have lived life and know how hard it is, are right there with us, cheering us on. Think of it like cheerleaders. So when we go to celebrate Halloween, it might be helpful to find someone who is like you, who you can relate to, that you can basically invite to be on your team or to be your cheerleader as we walk through life.
Okay, so, Mr. Carrillo, All Saints' Day happens to be on November 1st, as well as the Day of the Dead. Could you give us some information on the Day of the Dead?
Something that we have to remember with Day of the Dead, it's kind of like a respecting and a remembering of our ancestors who have passed on to the next life. And even though there might be some people who don't celebrate it, like myself, my family doesn't celebrate it, but it is a great importance of celebrating of culture and of remembering the people who have lived on before us and who live on after us. And so it's a great time to remember all the great memories that we've had with them and to really focus on memories.
Thank you all for that information to help us understand the importance of holidays surrounding Halloween.
Now back to the Telltale Heart.
Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than mine did. Never before that night have I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think I drew back, but no. His room was as pitch black, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through fear of robbers. And so, I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it, steadily, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening. Then, the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed listening, just as I have done every night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of pain or grief. Oh no! It was low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I knew it well. I knew how the old man felt, and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor. It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he has been trying to comfort himself with all these superstitions, but he found all in vain. All in vain because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped him, the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he was neither nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room.
Hi, Diary.
Hi, Cesar.
This show is pretty scary, isn't it?
Sure is, but you want to know what's really scary?
What?
Bullying.
Ah!
October is National Bullying Prevention Month, so here's some advice on how to stamp out bullying for good. 1. If you're ever getting bullied, please tell a trusted adult.
2. If you're also getting bullied, you can also talk to friends that can help you with any problem that you have.
Do you feel better now?
Yes, I feel a lot better now. Sorry about the screaming.
That's okay.
Alright.
Back to the show.
When I waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray with the thread of a spider shot from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else but the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon that darn spot. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as beating of the drum stimulates the soldier to courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder, every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you I am nervous, so I am. And now, the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of the house, so strange a noise as this excited me to an uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. The beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now, with the new anxiety that seized me, the sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With the loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him, and then I smiled gaining to find the deed, so far, had been done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my head upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
Hi guys, it's Liam. Have you ever had an experience you just can't explain? What were those weird lights in the sky? What was that strange noise you heard when you were alone? You were alone, right? For thousands of years, people have seen mysterious figures of light dancing across swamps in the dead of night. Are they ghosts? Nope. What people have been observing is a natural phenomenon caused by oxidation of phosphane, diphosphane, and methane produced by organic decay. How do I know this? All thanks to a little thing called science. Much of what we fear in life is fear of the unknown, and Science Club can help us get to the bottom of a lot of these mysteries. Good thing there's a Science Club at Cristo Rey, isn't there? Interested? You should be. On October 30th, After School Science Club will be taking a field trip to OSU's Veterinary College. All are welcome, but you have to get a permission slip from Miss Bauman. There's no reason to be afraid, since this is a field trip to see how vets are trained. The goal will be to keep the animals alive, so there should be absolutely no zombie kittens. Oh no, there weren't supposed to be zombie kittens. Keep away from me. Help. Aw, they're so cute, but no, keep away. Help me. Help. No!
If you still think me mad, you will think that no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. Then, I took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. Then, I replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could detect anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for a tub that had caught all. Aha! When I had made the end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to do now? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity. As officers of the police, a shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. A suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I made the gentle welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest with their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Paris.
I'm feeling really freaked out right now because next week is the scariest day of the year.
You mean Halloween?
No way, that's easy. I'm talking about the early action deadline on November 1st.
We're here with Miss Grassinger to get some advice.
Miss Grassinger, what is early action?
So, early action deadlines, which happen on November 1st, November 15th typically, and December 1st, are sort of a way to indicate that you are interested in a college and get your application in sooner than the regular decision deadline. The best part about early action, though, is that you get a decision before like April. So instead of waiting all of that time, you hear back a little bit sooner.
Some people might get early action and early decision mixed up. I know you already explained what early action is, but could you explain a little bit about what early decision is?
Yeah, so early action with an A, right, is a non-binding way to indicate your interest and to get your application in early to different colleges. Early decision, with a D, is a binding contract. So you apply early and you're indicating your interest to that school early, but you're also saying, if I get into this college, I will attend. So most of the time with early decision, not only do you submit that application, but you also have to get a signature from perhaps a parent or guardian, and then a lot of times from me as well, because those schools really want to make sure that you understand what you're signing up for when you do an early decision application. My recommendation is always to do early action. Data shows that your chances of getting admitted to a college if you apply early action are higher. Plus, you still have some flexibility to consider your different options, look at financial aid before you make a decision. If you apply early decision, you don't have that luxury. You are just saying, I will go no matter what. So early action is the way to go. Early decision, it's best to talk with your college counselor first.
Let's say a student has a school they really want to go to. Should they apply early decision? What's the right course of action?
Well, I think the right course of action would be to talk to me. We look to see what the financial aid offerings are, because traditionally that's my number one concern is if you apply ED and you're admitted, will you be able to afford that college?
Can you list some of the pros and cons of both so people can get a better perspective on both?
Yeah. So many schools who are, I don't even say highly selective anymore, but highly rejective. So your Harvards, your Yales, those really strong schools, they will have typically an ED option, an early decision binding option, but they won't have an early action option. So for many schools, it becomes a lot about strategy. So if you are really interested in one of those highly rejective schools, then we can talk about applying ED and have a good game plan for what that looks like and the benefits of doing it that way. And again, so if you're applying ED and you're getting accepted, then that's the school that you're going to. Hopefully it's one that you're really excited about, and it should be. And so that makes it easy. You're kind of done at that point. A con of that, though, is that you don't really know your financial aid situation unless we do a little bit of research beforehand, which is always why I want to know if you're considering ED so we can chat it out and make sure that we're all on the same page with that. There's really, in my opinion, not a lot of downside to early action. I would say the biggest con for early action is that it just puts more work on your plate earlier on in the process. So right now, you guys, our goal is to have about 10 to 12 colleges that you're applying to. If many of those colleges do early action, that means you have to have about 10 to 12 applications ready to go by November 1st, November 15th. That just might not be physically possible for you to have all of that work done. So then at that point, you need to prioritize which schools am I most excited about, because those are the schools that I want to apply early action, because my chances are higher of getting into those schools.
Thank you, Ms. Grassinger, for all this information. I feel so much less stressed about college.
Thank you for guiding us through our college journeys and making this college process easier.
Thank you guys for being awesome students and for putting in the really hard work that it takes to apply to college. I'm always so impressed with you all.
Thank you, Ms. Grassinger. Now back to the Telltale Heart.
I was singularly at ease. They sat while I answered cheerily. They chatted of familiar things, but ere long, I felt myself getting pale. I had wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and chatted. The ring became more distant. It continued, and it became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained distinctiveness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No, I doubt I grew very, very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was low, dull, quick sound, much a quick sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations. But the noise had steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if to fury to the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh man, what was I to do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. The noise arose all over and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 but the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, oh no, no. They heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and now I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than the derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt I must scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here, it is the beating of his hideous heart.
We hope you enjoyed this special presentation of the Telltale Heart. What did Vivian really hear? Was it actually the beating of the old man's heart? Was it her own conscience? Or could it have been something even more sinister? You decide. For now, this concludes the Cristo Rey podcast Halloween special. But don't forget to listen to the podcast next week. If you dare.
This is the podcast, Cristo Rey. I think that I was born to stuff my face with candy corn. This is the podcast, Cristo Rey. And if you're from the future, could you tell me who won election night?
So I was raised as a middle class kid. And I
We're
am
doing
actually
tariffs
the
on
only
other
person
countries.
on
Other
this
countries
stage
are going
who
to
has a
finally,
plan that
after
is about lifting up
75
the middle
years,
class
pay
and
us
working
back
people
for
of
all
America.
that we've done for the world.
I believe in
And
the ambition, the
tariff will be
aspirations, the
substantial in some
dreams of the
cases. I
American
took in
people.
billions and billions
And that
of
is
dollars,
why
as you know,
I
from
imagine
China.
and have
In
actually
fact, they
planned
never
to
took the
build
tariff
what I
off
call
because
an
there was so much
opportunity
money they
cost.
can't.
Because
They would
here's the
totally
thing.
destroy.
We know